So this one is called a Worm Farm Composter, and the idea is that the worms inside will eat through and digest your kitchen scraps, making you really good compost and compost tea that you can use on your houseplants or out in your garden. So let me show you how it works. First of all, you have your base layer, and this is where any excess moisture collects, or the worm juices, also called compost tea, which is really excellent to water your houseplants with. And then you can see at the bottom there's a built-in drain so that you can access that compost tea anytime. And then you have your filter, which keeps any debris or even some of the worms from falling down into that base tray. Then you have your trays, which is where I'm going to be putting the worms, and I'm going to only be starting with one out of the 2 trays in the beginning. Worm composting works pretty much the same as regular compost in that you need a balance of both carbon and nitrogen. So I'll grab some shredded paper and dried leaves first. This is the bedding for the worms, also called the carbon source, and fill the tray up about halfway. So the bedding helps control odor and moisture, helps with aeration, and it does provide feed for worms. Then I'll sprinkle some coffee grounds on top of that to provide a little grit, which is really good for the worms' stomachs. Then I'll settle the worms in on top of that. So at this point, I'm just gonna cover with the lid and let them sit for a week. And after that time, I can start adding the nitrogen source. So these are your kitchen scraps, which you can put in a layer on top of the worms. So the worms work through those kitchen scraps, digest them, and as you keep layering more on, you do want to make sure to add a handful of bedding along with the kitchen scraps every time to keep a good balance. So as soon as the worms reach the top of that first tray, that's when you can add your second tray on. And then you want to put a little bedding and food in the bottom of that tray, and the worms will start to work their way up into that second tray. Once they've all made it up there, then you want to let this tray sit. This one's just full of worm compost, worm castings. You want to let them sit for about a month so they can mature, and then you can use them. And then once they filled the second tray, then you put this tray on top of that one, and so on and so forth. It's kind of like a never-ending cycle of one tray on top of the other, with those worms just working through those scraps and creating compost for you. So the worms will eventually work through about a ½ pound of kitchen scraps a day, but not right in the very beginning when they're trying to acclimate and grow and kind of get used to their new home. So if you have an excess of kitchen scraps, you can always put them in like a kitchen crock, like this one right here. It looks pretty, so you can keep it on your counter. But the cool thing about these is that they have a charcoal filter which fits up in the lid that filters out any odors, so you don't smell it in your kitchen. And then if you want to make it even more clean, you can get special compostable bags instead of using regular plastic, which you can't compost.